In the first video in this series, we took you to what appears to have been Lehi's first camp at the Valley of Lemuel. In this documentary, we will show you what was probably the last encampment of the prophet and his family before they set sail for the Americas. Nephi called this place bountiful because of its much fruits and wild honey.
It is evident from Nephi's writings that Bountiful was located in southern Arabia, and that they had to travel through some of the worst desert in the world to get there. A land of much fruit in a hellish desert, a contradiction of terms, or another witness for the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon.
The daughters of Ishmael did murmur against my father, because he had brought them out of the land of Jerusalem, saying, Our father is dead, yea, and we have wandered much in the wilderness. And we have suffered much affliction, hunger, thirst, and fatigue. And after all these sufferings, we must perish in the wilderness with hunger. We did take again our journey in the wilderness, and we did travel nearly eastward from that time forth. And we did travel and wade through much affliction. And we did come to the land which we called Bountiful, because of its much fruit, and also wild honey. We did pitch our tents by the seashore. And it came to pass that the Lord spake unto me, saying, Thou shalt construct a ship. Book of Mormon critic Thomas Key wrote, quote, In Arabia, where Lehi reportedly traveled, there has been no bountiful land, with much fruit and also wild honey, no timber that Nephi could have used to build a ship. Unquote. Thomas Key noted in this article that indeed Arabia is only bountiful in sunshine, petroleum, sand, heat, and fresh air. Thomas Key is not the only scholar to have wondered how Joseph Smith in 1830 could have been so presumptuous in writing of a land bountiful in desolate, inhospitable Arabia.
Nephi's trail would have ended at the Indian Ocean. The frankincense trail itself ends just a few miles from this spot. The fruit plantations here belong to the fishing village of Taka. We know that this settlement existed even before Lehi's time. Fishing hooks have been found here dating back to 1500 BC. Nephi wrote that they pitched their tents on the seashore and called the place bountiful because of its much fruit.
The orchards at Taka run for over 2 miles with coconuts, papaya, bananas, sugarcane, vegetables, and citrus fruits. Nephi wrote of a land bountiful. Taka is located along the 40-mile-long fertile valley called the Salalah Coastal Plain, a shoreline valley surrounded by mountains 3,000 to 6,000 feet high. These mountains capture the monsoon rains, which the Arabs call the Al-Kharif. Surrounded by arid desert, the annual Al-Kharif rains transform Salalah into a tiny garden island and make it the only place in Arabia, in fact, where tropical fruits grow. The Arabian Peninsula covers over 1 million square miles. It is, for the most part, an arid land, bone dry. Tropical Salalah is where the Al-Kharif rains fall, in an area only 35 miles by 25 miles. Indeed, Salalah comprises less than 1/2 of 1/1000th of the entire Arabian Peninsula. Today we find large orchards in 3 locations in the Salalah coastal plain, each located near the seashore. But did such scenes exist in Nephi's time? It just so happens that by the beginning of the 6th century BC, the Salalah coastal plain was indeed a bustling crossroads of the frankincense trade. Thousands of workers were employed in harvesting and shipping. Thousands of cameleers and traders came here to trade their goods for frankincense and other goods. The ruling tribe would most certainly have exploited the rich soil, abundant water, and excellent climate to profit from the sale of fruits and other provisions to the caravansary. One might ask if Salalah's same unique climate existed in the 6th century BC. The answer is probably yes, and probably yes in ancient Arabia, only at Salalah. Evidence? The area's ancient rainfall patterns recorded in the caves of southern Oman. The more rain, the larger the stalagmites. Using this information, Professor Samir Hanna, professor of earth sciences at Sultan Qaboos University in Oman, concludes that for the last 5,000 years, the climate was approximately what it is today, monsoon periods that are followed by dry periods. What one can see today in Oman is basically what one would have seen in Nephi's day, a garden at Salalah and arid conditions everywhere else. Today, the city of Salalah is known as the Garden City of Arabia. Nearly a millennium ago, the Arab explorer Ibn Battuta called the coastal plain a garden valley in an isolated desert region. It was not until the 1950s that Dr. Hugh Nibley first brought Salalah to the attention of the LDS community. Today, the Salalah coastal plain is a bountiful of much fruit, where Tim and George stopped often to taste the local tradition.
Hey man, I feel like a coconut drink.
Okay, you pick the fruit stand.
How about this one up here?
All right.
India.
From
Bagi
Salala.
short, big or salala.
Other ones are all Salala.
Yellow, green or salala.
Salala. We got the papaya.
Papaya
The
or
papaya.
Salala.
All Salala papaya.
Continue, papaya.
Sugar cane.
Huh?
The sugar cane.
Salala.
Salala too.
Salala.
What else from Salala?
Yes.
Other things from
Yeah,
Salala?
fruit items, all salala.
All Salala. All
All
the fruit
Salala.
Salala. How about these?
What is it?
These avocado.
Yes, avocado.
Not from Salala.
Salala.
Salala?
All.
Oh,
All.
these
Salala.
guava, right? Guava.
Yeah. Salala.
Salala also.
All.
These not Salala.
This star fruit. Name.
From India, no?
No,
Salala too. Ah, it's all Salala. Wonderful. Now would like two of your favorite or famous Salala drinks. Could you prepare two of those for us?
One.
Two. Yeah. Just for drinking now.
Drink or just
Okay. Thank you.
If the Salala coastal plain is the land bountiful, and the village of Taka, the area where Nephi built his ship, then we should find evidence that the 11 characteristics that Nephi's text attributes to the place bountiful existed there in the 6th century BC. Bountiful was populated. The Lord commanded Nephi to go to the mountain. There must have been a large mountain in the place, a source of ore for making bronze or iron tools. Large ships require large, strong, straight, and uniform timbers. Fruit was growing in Bountiful in the 6th century BC. The honeybee was native to Bountiful. Nephi hunted for meat while at Bountiful. Animal hides were available from which a bellows could be made. There has to have been a trail into Bountiful in the 6th century BC. Nephi struck 2 stones together to make fire. Cliffs above deep water. Nephi indicated that they were in the wilderness 8 years, and then came to Bountiful. This would imply that Bountiful was not a wilderness. Indeed, the shoreline of southern Arabia has been populated for thousands of years. Nephi wrote that he knew the manner of which men were working timbers and ships. Again, this implies that woodworkers and shipwrights were active in Bountiful. The Salala coast plain was inhabited during Nephi's time. Some scholars believe that people have lived on the plain since the time of the Book of Genesis. Arabist archaeologist Juris Zarins has identified the ruins in the Salala coast plain from 1100 BC to 200 BC as those of the people of the tribe of Ad. If Lehi and his family came to the Salala coastal plain, they would have associated with the people of Ad. Historian William Hamblin understands well the historical setting. He wrote, quote, "A theoretical reconstruction of Lehi's stay in southern Arabia could run something like this. Lehi and his family eventually arrive in Hadramaut, at that time a highly populated region, serving as one of the main trade routes of southern Arabia. There, they would have necessarily made contact with the local inhabitants, if only because every well in the region would have been owned by some tribe or city, and a stranger would not have been allowed to drink from the wells without permission." Unquote. The notion that Nephi and his family wandered unnoticed into southern Arabia is an ill-conceived myth. They would have been known, and their movements controlled by the ruling tribe, which in Nephi's time appears to have been the people of Ad. According to Zarin, the people of Ad built small cities on tops of hills, such as this one at Ein Hamran, 8.6 miles northwest of Taka. The Lord commanded Nephi to get thee into the mountain. Less than 10 miles east of Taka and Korori is Jebel Samhan. At nearly 5,000 feet, it is by far the tallest mountain in southern Oman. It is in clear view of Korori. On the mountain, Nephi asked where he could find ore to make tools. The Lord showed him, presumably while Nephi was still on the mountain. In April 1998, a group of researchers from Brigham Young University found small ore deposits below Jebel Samhan. Kent Brown, director of ancient studies at BYU, said, quote, "It is from these simple forms of iron ore that a person like Nephi could make tools." A great sailing ship needs large timbers for its keel, bow, and mast, which timbers are not found in Arabia, except for one possible exception, the valley above Taka. Although the hills above Salalah are covered with a thick green forest, these gnarly softwood trees are useless for building the structural components of a large ship. George Potter and Richard Wellington believe Nephi used imported timbers when he constructed his ship. Imported teak, mango, and coconut timbers and other shipbuilding materials certainly would have been imported by the people of Ad in exchange for the frankincense. The earliest documented long-distance sea trade in the world is that recorded on Sumerian baked clay tablets from Mesopotamia over 4,000 years ago. It documents the king of Dilmun importing, quote, wood from foreign lands. The leading scholars on maritime archaeology in Oman believe that timber for shipbuilding was probably being imported to Salalah from India well before Lehi's time. However, what if Nephi could not have afforded imported timbers? There appears to be a possible source of native large timbers found in Oman only in the wadi just above Taka. The valley above Taka is called Wadi Darbat National Park. George Potter and Tim Sedor took the road from Taka into Wadi Darbat. What they found there was something very special. After the monsoon rains, the wadi turns into a rainforest, an Arabian jungle. Professor Hanna writes, quote, Wadi Darbat contains important archaeological features as well as majestic scenic views of lakes, waterfalls, and wildlife. All of this, coupled with the surrounding vegetation and the tranquility of the place, provide a vision of paradise." Unquote. The British explorer Rudolph Fiennes describes Wadi Darbat as a magical scene from the 1001 Arabian Nights. The locals call Wadi Darbat the Valley of the Large Trees. However, the tribesmen told them all the big trees had been logged. From a distance, they saw a stand of large trees near one of the wadi's lakes. However, they were disappointed to find that these were sycamore figs, softwoods, that could not have been used for the structural timbers of a large ship. George and Tim had nearly lost hope of finding large hardwoods in Oman, when suddenly they came to a giant tree. This hardwood juniper had a circumference of nearly 20 feet. They believe it is the deforesting of trees like this that led the tribesmen to tell them that Wadi Darbat no longer had its big trees. The deforesting of Wadi Darbat and the surrounding hills is documented. Even so, George and Tim left the wadi convinced Nephi might have used trees like the one found in Wadi Darbat to construct his ship. Evidence suggests that much fruit grew in and around Taka and Korori in Nephi's time. The Oman Ministry of National Heritage and Culture claims that the fishing boats of Taka, the Dofari Sambuk, have been built there since great antiquity. Such a classification must predate Nephi. Since coconut timbers and fibers were used to build the ship, caulk it, and to fabricate its sails, we can only assume that they must have been cultivated by the people in the area, or imported during the 6th century BC. There is a strong oral tradition that supports the idea that people ruling the Salalah coastal plain in Nephi's time had fruit trees. The traditions center around the prophet Hud, who visited the people of Ad. Although the story of the prophet Hud is found in the Quran, the poetry and oral traditions of southern Arabia about Hud predate Islam. The oral tradition tells of God blessing the people of Ad so that they would prosper. They started to believe that with their wealth, if they could reproduce the conditions of heaven, a paradise on earth, they would live forever, all without the need for God. Islamic scholars cite that this was a literal attempt to recreate paradise as defined in the Quran. To those that believe and work righteousness, that their portion is gardens beneath which rivers flow, every time they fed with fruits therefrom. One oral tradition of Hud provides an accurate description of one place, the nature reserve and national park at Wadi Darbat, just above Taka. As the story goes, the ponds and rivers, the birds and beasts, wild and tame, rejoiced at the conception of Hud. The trees of the tribe of Ad became green and brought forth fruit out of season. Bountiful could have been a description of the fruit that grows in Wadi Darbat. In Wadi Darbat, George and Tim came across large trees that blanketed the ground with fig-like fruit. Tim and George drove through Wadi Darbat just after the monsoon season. They found the valley covered with vines. These vines must bear some kind of fruit. The honeybee is only native to Oman and no other parts of Arabia. Honey is gathered from wild bees in Oman. To this date, the Omani honeybee has not been domesticated. On exhibit in the National Museum of Heritage and Culture is a 3-foot-high pot from Salalah that used to store wild honey. Still, they were delighted to see bees on the plants and flowers in Wadi Darbat, only 8 miles from Taka. Native to the hills surrounding the coast plain are 20 species of wild mammals, of which 7 appear to be found only in the Dhofar Mountains. According to Sultan Qaboos University, the cave art found in Wadi Darbat depict camels, goats, and wild animals. One of the reasons Wadi Darbat has been designated a national park and nature reserve is its wildlife. The Darbat lakes must have served as watering holes for the animals throughout the year. Hunting would have been an easy activity for Nephi and his brothers in Wadi Darbat, because it was just a few miles from where he was building his ship. Nephi made bellows from the skins of animals. Skins from camels and goats certainly would have been available. Cattle are not generally raised in the Arabian desert. Salalah is the one exception to this rule. In fact, one of the most ancient tribes in Dhofars, the Jibalis, are by tradition cattlemen. The existence of cattle at Taka would have provided Nephi the means for transporting logs from Wadi Darbat to where he was building his ship. Only a handful of trails are known to have led from the interior desert trails through the nearly impassable mountains to the Indian Ocean shoreline. Of these, only one ended in a valley with much fruit, the Dhofar branch of the Frankincense Trail. Nephi needed a trail for 2 reasons. First, the frankincense groves of the Hadramaut in southern Arabia were the source of great wealth. They were guarded. People were simply not allowed to wander wherever they pleased. The Roman historian Pliny wrote that travelers who left the official road were, quote, summarily executed, unquote. Second, the mountains that separate the interior trails from the shoreline are impassable by camel without a good trail. An ancient camel trail through these mountains to the Salalah coastal plain is not a matter of speculation. It is a well-documented historical fact. Nephi struck 2 stones together to make fire. George and Tim traced the frankincense trail from the last major halt in the desert, Shisar, to the Salalah coastal plain. They found flint deposits at Shisar, a point 70 miles from the plain, and again 21 miles from the sea. If Nephi took the frankincense trail to Salalah, all he needed to do to possess this stone that was prized in ancient times was to bend over and pick it up. The last clue Nephi left us in the Book of Mormon that would allow us to locate Bountiful is the account of his brother's attempt to throw him into the depths of the sea. This was no mere skirmish between brothers, but a real life and death situation. The brothers were not just going to throw Nephi into a sea in which he could walk away, but into the depths of the sea, where he would have drowned. Anywhere along the shoreline itself, the water is only a few feet deep, and would not have been the depths. Nephi could have simply walked or swam back to the shore. We know of only one place along the southern Arabian shoreline where one could be thrown from land into what we estimate as 30 to 40 feet of water, the depths of the sea. Again, it is at Taka where the rock promontories reach out several hundred yards from the shoreline. One push, and Nephi would have fallen 100 feet to his sure death in the depths of the sea without hope of reaching the shore again. In summary, history and geography tell us that there was only one trail that Nephi could have taken to reach the Indian Ocean in a land laden with fruit, the ancient incense trail that ended at the village of Taka. Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon in the 1820s. It was impossible for him to have known of a place anything like Bountiful in Arabia. Yet such a place did indeed exist. So, a Bountiful in Arabia? 5 decades ago, such a notion would have seemed preposterous, and many told us so in their scholarly works attempting to discredit Joseph Smith. As you have seen on this video, all the evidence today suggests that the area around Taka in Oman had, in the 6th century BC, all the characteristics described in the Book of Mormon.
Now let's turn to the essential question. Despite all the evidence that the Salalah coastal plain, Taka, and Korori, the natural harbor, that it was the land of Bountiful as described in the Book of Mormon, is there a way of confirming that it is bountiful? I believe that there is. Over the years that I've explored in Oman, I have befriended Ali Al-Shari, a local historian and a person who actually grew up in Wadi Darbat, the beautiful valley above Korori. Ali is the author of 13 books. He has lectured at Brigham Young University. He has documented the local tribe's genealogy and has allowed the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Family Search to digitize his genealogy. In his book, The Language of Ad, Ali shows that the area around Korori and Taka, an area of about 10 miles, belonged to the tribe of Ophir. He also shows that his own personal genealogy goes back to Ophir, one of the descendants of Noah. I found this very interesting because several historians believe that the harbor of Korori was the land of Ophir as designated in the Bible. The LDS Bible Dictionary states of Ophir, probably a port in southern Arabia. We have multiple sources pointing to the natural harbor of Korori being the biblical harbor of Ophir and Wadi Darbat and Taka as being the land of Ophir. So what does it mean, this term Ophir? Let's turn to some non-LDS authoritative sources used by Bible scholars. First, let's look at Smith's Bible Dictionary. Ophir means abundance. Go to Thesaurus and put in abundance. You'll find the word bountiful. Next, let's turn to Hitchcock's Bible Names Dictionary, another non-LDS source. What does the name Ophir means? A fruitful region. It seems straightforward to me. If you want to see bountiful as described in the Book of Mormon, hop on a plane and fly to Salalah in Oman. Then go to the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Korori, the ancient harbor. Then also go above the harbor to the magnificent valley, Wadi Darbat. Discover more about the Book of Mormon through science and exploration by subscribing to this channel. You can also go to our website, christinperu.com, to get information about our annual Book of Mormon tours to Peru, or to request a private tour to Oman and Saudi Arabia.